Hi all. I think I'm live now. I tried to go live about a few seconds ago and it just didn't work. So yeah, we're here again. But welcome to my page and to those of you who have listened to my podcast, thank you for listening. Thank you for all your comments and feedback. I really appreciate it. What I want to do is have maybe an ongoing podcast anyway, for you all to listen to. Those of you who haven't listened to the podcast, I suggest that you do. I think the link will be somewhere below this video anyway. And yeah, my thoughts on my first podcast. Obviously, I was a little bit scared to do it. I don't even know if scared is even the word. Yeah, I don't know if it was scared or apprehensive or just not really knowing what to expect from the whole thing. But it's been something that's been on my mind for a while. I have thought, oh, I want to do a podcast or I want to do a blog or something like that. But, I just never did it really. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to get my feet wet in this podcast thing and let me just do one. Obviously, for the first episode, I didn't actually record most of it. It was taken from an interview that I did last year with a lady from, I think, First Artist Radio, Deborah Ruffini. So she was interviewing me on the topic of spiritual abuse because obviously it's kind of unheard of. Not a lot of people have experienced this. So I almost volunteered myself to kind of share my story on the topic, as I feel that it's really, really, really important to do that. That's why I decided to share my story and my experience with spiritual abuse, because I think it's really, really important. I think there's a lot of things that people can take from my personal experience and from my personal story. So that's why I wanted to share it with you all. And as I said, just to get my feet wet in the whole podcast thing. That's why I thought that it would be good to add that interview, because I think a lot of people, probably on my Facebook, Instagram, just social media, full stop, really, haven't really heard from me in a while. Don't really know what I'm up to, what I've been doing, and stuff like that. So, yeah, just to, kind of announce myself again. Probably not in the best way. I can't really come back and say, oh, my life has been amazing, and I've been doing this, and I've been doing that, and I've been doing this. Like, yeah, I can't really say that because as you've heard from the podcast, or as you will hear if you haven't already heard it, life hasn't really been amazing for me the last few years. It's been quite a dark experience, and that's what I wanted to share on my podcast. So what I want to do with the podcast eventually is just take you on a journey to, with my story, to see how I managed to, get myself out of that situation and, to living my best life. So that's what I'm doing with the podcast. So I hope that you'll all be listening and tuning in, because there will be different topics all the time. Obviously, I am an entrepreneur. I am an author. I'm writing a book at the moment, which will be to do with this experience as well, kind of like an autobiography on just my life pretty much. So I'm writing that at the moment. That's exciting. I'm also making a documentary about the topic of spiritual abuse as well. So that isn't really to do with my personal life, but it's got to do with the topic of spiritual abuse and what exactly it is. So yeah, I'm doing that as well. So I'll be talking about entrepreneurship. I'll be talking about spiritual abuse. I'll be talking about religion, spirituality, also motherhood, because many of you may not have known from before my podcast that I actually have two babies. I have a son and I have a daughter, or I should say daughter and a son, because the girl's older than the boy. But so I'll be talking a little bit about motherhood as well in my podcast. Just anything that really comes up, to be honest, that I think is important to talk about. So yeah, I just want to share my thoughts with you. If you haven't liked my page already, it's Zara Black. Again, I think it's the same on Twitter. I think it's Zara_Black on Twitter. And Instagram is just lowercase Zara Black, like all one word. So you can find me on there as well. Yeah, so just to basically explain maybe a little bit more about the podcast, because obviously, I mean, it was quite lengthy if you listened to it. So I didn't want to, and I actually cut that interview down. It was actually a bit longer than that. And she shaved it down a little. So again, apologies for the sound, but I felt like it was a really good thing to do to expose you all to my life and what's been going on with me and stuff like that. And I felt like that interview just embodied everything. Like, I literally explained everything from start to finish almost, on everything that I've been through. So I felt like, I don't know. I just probably didn't want to like just explain everything from the start all over again. But yeah, I felt like that interview was just really captured everything, and that's why I wanted you to listen to it. Obviously, it was a phone call. That's why the sound wasn't, crisp and clear. But on my next podcast, the sound will be much more better, easier to listen to, right? So yeah. Just speaking a little bit about the content of the podcast. Yeah, I mean that's just exactly what happened. But there's so many things that we can all take away from that. My experience. My experience in knowing yourself, knowing what you stand for. Um, you know, just always retreating back to yourself and your intuition, because I think, as I mentioned in the podcast, um, I always knew the answers. I always knew what I wanted, but, probably I'd been conditioned from my childhood to put myself on the back burner, to put my needs on the back burner, to put, what I feel on the back burner, especially if it's got something to do with figures of authority. I might not feel confident enough to speak up, but really horrible and detrimental things can actually happen to you in your life if you're not willing to, stand up for yourself, if you're not willing to speak your mind, if you're not willing to just go for it and just be like, you know what, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not comfortable with that. And I'm not going to do it, full stop. Like, no matter who it is, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, if you feel like you're going to be stepping on people's toes and stuff like that, like, there's a difference between, being rude and aggressive, and then there is just, no, I'm going to stand up for myself right now. And I think a lot of abusive people will try and make you feel like maybe you're doing something wrong. Maybe you're a disrespectful or rude person just for standing up for yourself. So you can kind of start thinking, hold on a minute, did I do something wrong there? Maybe I'll try and, run away from confrontation. And I think that's something that I did a lot. I mean, I'm still trying. I'm still learning. Obviously, this is something that I'm constantly working on, trying to avoid confrontation. So sometimes I won't speak my mind and say what I'm really feeling, because of, like, I don't want, a clap back. I don't want confrontation and stuff like that. So I'll just be like, oh yeah, whatever, just leave it. But, as I'm trying to say, really detrimental things can happen if you keep putting yourself on the back burner. You will be walked all over, you'll be trampled upon, you will be, a doormat kind of thing. So yeah, I just wanted people to learn from my mistakes. Also, the topic of domestic abuse and domestic violence. I think I did mention in the interview that my ex-husband was physically abusive with me on occasions, but I mean, I wouldn't want to say a but, as to belittle the physical abuse, but the majority of the abuse was not physical. Let me put it like that. It wasn't physical. And even the physical abuse, it wasn't, exactly a punch in the face. Do you know what I mean? So it's much, much, much harder to get your head around what is actually happening, or really put your finger out and say, this is abuse, if it's not actually physical. Because with a physical, you got a bruise, you're hurt, stuff like that. You can you can't really brush that under the carpet, like, you hurt me, kind of thing. But when it's emotional abuse, or spiritual abuse, or mental, psychological abuse, gaslighting, crazy making, and all these things I will be going through in the podcast as well. I think maybe my next one will be about red flags of the narcissist, or something like that, something like that. I don't know what's going to be on, but stay tuned. But oh God, I've lost my trail of thought. Every time I say the word narcissist, I just I just go inside this tangent in my head. I just go inside this dark hole. Oh, a narcissist. Oh, not again. That kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know what it'll be on. Maybe it'll be about narcissism, something like that. I don't know. But just these kind of things that you can notice about the narcissist, to know that, okay, this isn't really a situation that I should be subjecting myself to, and I'm not going to subject myself to it. Nip it in the bud and get them away from you. A lot of people think that maybe it's just an intimate partner that can. No, your friends can be narcissists too. Your friends can be narcissists, putting you down, belittling you, trying to, sly, give you sly digs, and trying to, like, underhanded remarks and things like that, trying to make you feel bad about yourself and things like that. Friends can do that to other family members, siblings, aunties, uncles, grandparents. Anybody can be an abuser. Domestic abuse is not just boyfriend, girlfriend, boyfriend kind of thing. Anybody can actually abuse you, if you think about it. And more so spiritual abuse. When we're talking about spiritual abuse, that's a total stranger abusing you, essentially. We're talking about somebody, a religious leader, or I would say a cult leader. Again, during this podcast we'll be talking about cults as well. I'll tell you a little bit about my cult and the cult that I was in. I'm just trying to make sure my microphone is on. You'll be glad to know I have one, after the sound on that podcast, right? But yeah, so I'll be speaking a little bit about that as well. But just to go out into the world and understand that there are these creatures out here in this world. Like, there are people that are intentionally trying to hurt you, intentionally trying to mislead you. And it's all intentional, whether that be in a relationship. They've sought out from the beginning the kind of person you are. If you're quite an empathetic person, like, I'd like to say I'm quite empathetic. As people that have maybe a lot of childhood wounds, that haven't exactly healed, you might be going out into the world, like, looking for the savior. Somebody come and save me. And then, Prince Charming or Princess Charming, sometimes, because obviously it does happen to men as well, comes along and, makes it out like, oh, they're coming to save you. You fall into the trap. And then, that's when they start to abuse you, after you're actually, trauma bonded to them. And you almost don't even realize that it's abuse, what they're doing. But yeah, we'll be going a bit more in depth into that. But yeah, I just wanted to do a little commentary on my first podcast. Just getting out there and stuff. I was really appreciative. I don't even know if that's a word. Appreciative of a few people sending me messages and telling me, oh, Zara, we're happy to see you out there living your life and things like that. And it really touched me, and it really helped me to see that, I feel like I've really come out of this dark hole. I call it the sunken place, like from that film Get Out. I call it the sunken place because it literally is this kind of Bermuda Triangle, that you just fall into this sunken place that you actually cannot even get out of. You're watching yourself like struggling in this hole, and you're just like, oh my God, like how the hell am I going to get out of this? But it's almost like you feel powerless, like you're just watching yourself fall deeper and deeper into this dark hole. How do I get out? So we'll be talking more about that as well. But yeah, I just wanted to share that. Hi, Kieran. My only participant at the moment. Um, yeah, we were having an interesting conversation the other day as well, weren't we, about domestic abuse and just the fact that it can happen to anybody. Like, it's not even just a woman thing. Like, all the males are the abusers and the females are, the victims. It's not even like that all the time. Sometimes it's the other way around, especially if you remove the relationship from the abuse, you'll see that, as I said, your friends can be, manipulators and abusers if you just look out for it. Your other family members can do it, your parents can do it, your grandparents, your cousins, whatever, can do this to you as well. You actually just have to look out for the signs. If anybody's kind of, making you feel bad about yourself, or you're kind of feeling like you're in a situation where you can't really voice your opinions or your thoughts or your feelings, then you might want to look at, is this actually an abusive dynamic that I'm actually involved in? Especially again when it's somebody like a parent or a grandparent or somebody like that, you might not feel as confident to actually stick up for yourself, because if you're trying to talk back to your mum or your grandma, you might feel like, oh, okay, let me just leave this old lady alone. I'm not going to really say anything, but that what she's saying is maybe wrong or making you feel bad or a bit controlling, a bit abusive, but you don't want to say anything because you don't want to seem like, oh, you're rocking the apple cart, you're making trouble, kind of thing. And that's something like I have always struggled with, like being a troublemaker. That's just been my thing, so sometimes when I get myself into situations, I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to look like the angry Black woman. I'm just going to be quiet and just suck it up, kind of thing. But it's not healthy. It's actually not healthy. Like, if you actually feel something or not comfortable with something, like, why shouldn't we be able to say it? Like, seriously, like, at the end of the day, without all the titles and this, whatever dynamic of, this is my husband, it's my wife, it's my girlfriend, this is my mom, my dad, whatever, we are all human beings. Like I say all the time, like, you need to be even respecting children, kind of thing, which might sound crazy. Like, I'm not saying that, we should be respecting our children, like, they should be ruling over us or anything. But, you've got to respect them as human beings and not really be looking down at anybody for any reason. Respect everybody the same as a human being. But, if anybody's making you feel uncomfortable in any sort of way, then we should have the confidence to say, because it could spiral out of control. It's all those little moments that you can take. I have this friend, and he always says this thing, I'm allowed to do this, I'm allowed to do that. And I'm always like, you and this, you are allowed. Nobody said you weren't allowed, kind of thing. But it's almost that affirmation, just telling yourself, you know what, if I'm not comfortable in this situation, like, no, I'm allowed. If I don't want to lend you money, I'm allowed not to lend you money. I'm allowed not to drop you home. I'm allowed to not want to go out with you on Friday night. I'm allowed to tell you I'm not comfortable with you borrowing my shoes, or with anything, even in the workplace as well. If you're not comfortable with something, we feel like, okay, because your managers told you to do something or told you not to do something or what have you. With that dynamic as well, it's again speaking up to authority. I don't want to, oh, I'm scared to lose my job, so let me just keep quiet, even though you're not comfortable with whatever is being said. Again, we're putting ourselves on the back burner all the time for other people. And it's not a matter of making trouble all the time, because that is something I have to tell myself, because I have a really loud voice, and especially if I'm feeling passionate about something, you're going to hear from me. You're going to hear from me. Yeah. I'm going to say it like it is, but then because I know how I can get really into my point. I will deliver my point. I kind of almost get scared of myself, like, oh, okay, Zara, maybe we want to retreat a bit and just not seem like, again, that angry black woman. I'm going to tell you about yourself kind of thing. So it's not about making trouble, it's just about respecting your own self. That's all. All those little times that you stand up for yourself, those are little wins. Those are little wins. So even if oh, you know what, I'm feeling kind of uncomfortable to tell my sister that I don't know, she can't borrow my wig or whatever, right? Just anything. I'm feeling uncomfortable to tell my mom that I don't want to pick up the I don't know whatever, whatever the situation might be. You might not want to do something that your mom has told you to do, and you don't want to say it, even though it makes you uncomfortable. You put yourself on the back burner, like, okay, I'll just do it anyway. And then you start feeling depleted. You start feeling like, oh, why am I even doing this? I didn't even want to do this. I didn't even want to go there. I didn't want to, and then it's only you that's feeling bad, because 9 times out of 10, they don't even know the way you're feeling. You're proper feeling bad, beating yourself up about it, and they literally have no idea. That's why in that moment that they ask you a question, always remember it's a question. They asked you to do that thing. It may have been a yes or a no kind of thing. So you have the right to choose what you want to do. You don't have to comply all the time, or you don't have to do what they've told you to do. Just be yourself. Am I doing this because this is something that I really want to do? Or am I doing this to be a people pleaser? Am I doing this just so people won't think I'm a troublemaker? Am I doing this just so people won't think I'm loud? Or am I doing this because people won't think I'm aggressive, or this, that, and the other? Or people will think I'm a nice person, So people will think I'm a nice person. How many of us suffer with that? I had to get to the point where I'm just like, you know what? I don't want to be a nice person anymore, because the nice people get trampled on, The nice people get walked all over. The nice people are the friggin' doormats, and I don't want to be that anymore, I want to be able to be comfortable in my skin and say, you know what? I have control over my life, I'm going to do whatever I want to do and whatever makes me feel nice, whatever I'm comfortable with. I'm not going to be like, okay, well, I don't really want to go there, but I mean, I'll just go just because they asked me to. No, if you don't want to go, don't go, If you don't want to do that thing, just don't do it, It does seem quite simple, but it's a huge fight. For me, I can say that anyway about myself. It's a huge fight for me to actually stay true to myself and be like, you know what, I'm not actually comfortable with that, and yeah, I'm not going to do it, kind of thing. I told you all in my podcast, mate, I got married to somebody that I didn't even want to get married to. You could essentially say the core kind of rationale behind that was, I couldn't speak up for myself. I knew inside my heart, in my intuition, you know what, I don't want to be in this. I want to get away from here. What kind of, sign was I looking for? Some kind of, angel to show up and be like, no, Zara, don't do it. You don't have to do it. I mean, obviously not. You know what I mean? It's going to come from within you. The answers are always there, when you're feeling maybe you've got a job interview or whatever, and you just don't want that job, or maybe you're in that job and you're just like, man, I don't even want to be here. This is not what I want to be doing with my life. But you keep doing it just because, the fear of not being able to pay your rent or not having money or whatever, you don't want to take the leap and maybe leave the job and go into something else. How many months is it going to take me to find another job, or this and that, whatever. We've got so many excuses why we're not listening to ourselves all the time. And as I say, detrimental things can happen. Like, it's good to just get into the habit of being true to oneself, just get into the habit with little things, just little things with your friends, little things with your family. Yeah, some people might not, like the new you kind of thing, or the real you rather. I don't think it's a new you, I think it's a real you. But you've been covering up, just trying to be this person that's, oh, I'm a nice person, I don't want people to think I'm this, I don't want people to think I'm that, so I'm just gonna just go with the flow, so everybody will think, think or know that I am a nice person, kind of thing. And yeah, man, just get out of the habit of doing that, because yeah, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. Just speaking a little bit more about the topic of spiritual abuse itself. What can I say about that? Like, as I said before, like I kind of stumbled across the term. I was thinking, like, man, I am actually being abused in all these ways. Like, I was like, I'm being abused financially. I am being abused emotionally, mentally, psychologically, spiritually. I'm like, spiritual? Is that even a thing? Like, I actually Googled it, and like it was like a thing. Like, people, not a lot of posts and stuff, blogs and things like that would come up about it, but it was there. Like, it's definitely a thing. And a lot of people that I think it's quite the same as religious trauma syndrome. I think it's that post-traumatic stress disorder. I think they have a religious trauma disorder or something like that. Something to do with religious trauma, and I think they're trying to actually get it into the DSM at the moment, which is the American Psychological Association. I think what kind of warrants, kind of what is a mental health condition. So I think at the moment they're discussing, I think a lot of counselors and psychologists have come together and said, you know what, this should actually be a legit syndrome, religious trauma syndrome, or I can't remember whether it's religious trauma syndrome or religious trauma. I don't know. Michael, you should know. You should know what it's called. But yeah, something to do with religious trauma. Religious trauma syndrome or disorder is really the same as spiritual abuse, because the effects on the victim are just detrimental. Sometimes you can end up leaving your religion or your cult or whatever kind of group that you're in. Sometimes not even anything to do with religion. Sometimes your cult, your group can be like a political thing. It could be like a fitness thing. Sometimes multi-level marketing schemes as well. Those can be like little kind of abusive cults as well. That's why I'm like, what, pay attention. Just pay attention to every single setting that you're in, whether it be at work, whether it be in the shops, whether it be in your home. Like, just pay attention, because these abusive individuals are absolutely everywhere. Just check the behavior patterns, they are there. And it's time we get to talking about these abusive individuals and, really taking our power back, really knowing who we are, standing for what we believe in as individuals, not what society has conditioned us to think or believe, or what's, appropriate, what our parents have even conditioned us to think is appropriate behavior or appropriate thoughts or appropriate kind of life decisions or whatever. That's all conditioning. We've all been conditioned to believe, whatever we think almost, and we almost have to kind of strip that down, like strip everything away. Like, okay, after, all my religious conditioning, the conditioning, my cultural conditioning, the conditioning in my, society or whatever, who the hell am I? Yeah, who am I? What do I actually stand for? Who am I? What do I actually believe in, like, genuinely? we have to start thinking about these things. Is this my own voice? Are these my own thoughts, or is it the thoughts that have been planted in my head? You know, as a Christian, there were so many things that were almost planted in me, dumped on me. Like, okay, as a Christian person, you should think like this. As a Christian person, you should think like that. You shouldn't think like that. You shouldn't think like this. You should, that's not a good thing to be thinking of, and stuff like that. And you're just like, okay, you kind of create this persona of yourself, like the appropriate persona, which is not really your true self, because technically it's almost like you've been like this plain baby doll and they've just stuck all these stickers on you, like, okay, this is who you are, you're going to be like this, you're going to be like that, you're going to be like this, just giving you all these stickers and labels. This is what you stand for, that's your political party, these are the people you like, these are the people you don't trust, this is, these are your interests, these are your hobbies, kind of thing. This is what you believe, giving you an identity, but we're actually born into this world as individuals. It's our right to almost delve into who the hell we are without all of this conditioning, stripping everything away that we've actually been taught and conditioned to think about ourselves or believe about ourselves in society, and the kind of groups that we're involved in, and our social relationships and stuff like that, and really figure out, what, if I strip that away, what is it? Who am I? What do I actually stand for? Who is the kind of person that I actually want to be, or I actually am, rather, because it's not like you're trying to, again, create this new persona of yourself. It's almost taking away those stickers, like, okay, that was something that I was given. I'm not really sure I agree with that. And giving yourself permission to take those stickers off, because sometimes we're like, okay, well, I don't really believe in, it might even just be like, a religious thing, for example, I question this doctrine or this religion or whatever I'm doing all the time. Or I was born into this cult, and, it's kind of weird, but my parents are here, my cousins are here, everybody I know is here, kind of thing, the whole community. I don't really believe it. I don't really believe what this leader is actually talking about. But who has actually questioned that leader before? Nobody. So who the hell are mini you to stand up and be like, you know what, I don't actually believe anything this guy is actually saying? Like, you're not going to feel that confidence to actually go out there and be like, you know what, I don't believe all of this trash. I'm not listening to this anymore, But that's what I mean by giving yourself permission to take off those stickers. Like, you know what, it's okay to disagree. As my friend would say, I'm allowed to disagree, with these things, and giving yourself permission. Like, yes, you are allowed as an individual in this world that was created. You are allowed to take off those stickers and find out exactly who you are without all of this conditioning and stuff like that. So yeah, that's just about the abuse of spirituality, because it can really, 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 really mess with you. And as the condition says, religious trauma, what do you take from religious trauma? You have trauma attached to religion. That is quite serious. That is actually quite a serious thing to actually go through, especially if you've been through or if you were brought up religious, for example, and then that's the very thing that traumatizes you. It's crazy. But yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a lowdown, a little bit of an overall kind of discussion about the podcast. What was it, this morning? Yeah, and just speak a little bit about you, about me, on that, so you can all kind of, warm yourself up to, my situation of what I've gone through and how I've managed to pull myself out and live my best life, get my life together again and flourish. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for listening to this live as well. You can share the podcast, you can share this live as well, and it'll be really good to hear your feedback and stuff like that. Really appreciate that. Stay tuned for my next podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.